Hey folks, Brian Havens here with a workshop update. So it's been a while since I've done an update because I was working on a straight edge video which I released last week on how to make cove molding on the table saw. It's been about a year since I did a straight edge video, and in fact this one was not planned. It just sort of came up all of a sudden. And the impetus for that video started with this display cabinet, specifically the cove molding on this display cabinet. What I did is that when I went to go make this cove molding, I set up my fence as usual and started using a piece of 8/4 stock, flipping it end for end so that I had cove molding that was identical on both sides. And I realized at some point that's not the way it's usually done. So sure enough, I called my friend Todd Clippinger up in Montana. And I said, "Hey, I just made cove molding with some 8/4 stock. Is that the way? That's not the way it's usually done." He said, "Yeah, there's a few guys, few pros that know about how to do that, but most hobbyists aren't aware of that technique." So I gave it a little bit more thought, and I said, "Well, now what if you do that with asymmetric cove molding? What do you do then? You don't really have two pieces that are the same." And I said, "Aha, exactly." So you can actually make two types of cove molding at the same time, and depending on where you split them, you get actually different cove molding profiles. So yeah, if you want to see that, check out the video. Now since then, I realized there was even some other possibilities. I saw I think it was a grandfather clock that had some really tall moldings, so you could take and make a composite molding that instead of being really long like this, like in the, maybe like that, you could actually do something really tall like that. And the other thing you could do, you could plan to make your two halves of the cove molding. You wouldn't want to use, for this particular technique, you wouldn't want to use something as asymmetric as that, but slightly asymmetric so that they're a little bit different either side, and then use one for the top and one for the bottom. I'm not sure which one would be taller or longer or more asymmetric. You'd have to experiment, but you could have in one project on one's cove molding blank decide and make a slightly different cove molding for the top and the bottom of a project. So enough about the video. Back to the cabinet, the display cabinet. This is a cabinet that I made for a friend of ours, a retired school teacher, who is a big fan of The Wizard of Oz, and she has a cherished Dorothy doll that she wants to put on display. Doesn't want to leave it out without any kind of protection, so she asked me to make this cabinet for her. Now the interesting thing I learned about making a display cabinet or any piece of furniture or cabinetry that's intended to display some other item is that you have to be really careful. You want to make it nice, but you don't want it to distract from what it is you're trying to display. So you have to be very careful of what kind of ornamentation that you put on such a cabinet. Now, case in point, the back panel is veneered. It's different. The main wood is a black walnut, and the veneered back panel is actually a different species of wood. I originally was going to use some Tamo ash that I had because it was yellow. It had these grain that almost looked like, kind of reminiscent of Yellow Brick Road. But when we took the doll and put it in front of that, you could tell your eye wasn't sure, should I look at the really beautiful grain of the Tamo ash or should I look at the doll? So they were competing for attention. On the other hand, we tried just using regular black walnut with the rest of the cabinet, and it was kind of mundane. That wasn't really the right ticket either. So what I came up with is I ended up using a piece of slightly figured English walnut. And that way it's a little bit different. It gives it a nice backdrop, but not so distracting that you're going to be wanting to look at the English walnut and not the doll. I also applied that same idea to the knob. I wanted the knob to be noticeable, but again, not distracting. So I didn't want to use something like ebony, where your focus goes to the knob and say, "Wow, that's kind of what kind of species of that? Have it stand out too much?" So what I ended up doing is putting an end grain Claro walnut knob, so that you see it there, but it's not screaming out for attention. Now, another way I try to make the cabinet nice but not distracting is, even though I used a plain sawn black walnut for the whole as the main wood, I cut it out so that it's all straight grain. So you don't have this cathedral grain sort of drawing your attention away. It's nice and straight, it still looks nice, but not drawing attention away from the item being displayed. Now the third thing I did to try to keep the distraction down and also help display the doll is, instead of going with a molding with a lot of detail, a lot of facets, I stuck with a simple cove molding. Now the other intention was, I was hoping that the cove molding on the top and the bottom tend to draw your eye in and towards the doll. I'm not, now, whether that worked or not, I'm still trying to decide, and maybe that's, I can let you guys decide. Do you think the cove molding is too much, or is it doing a nice job at the bottom and the top of drawing your eye into the thing being displayed? So I'm going to leave that as a viewer to decide item. Now, another thing I did a little different on this cabinet, because it's glass, you have the problem of finishing. One solution some people will do is they'll leave a rabbet on the back side, and they'll use they'll have strips that they'll tack in, but I don't like to use nails that close to glass, so I left it as a regular dado. But that brings up, now you have a problem with finishing. You either have to mask it really well, or you need to do what I did, which was I pre-finished all of my frames, rails and stiles ahead of time, and then assembled it afterwards. And there's some advantages to doing pre-finishing, like glue cleanup is really easy because you don't get glue soaking into the wood. But there's other problems. One, for instance, even though you lay out the mortises or whatever joinery you use as best you can, you're always going to have a little bit of misalignment. And because you've pre-finished, once you put it together, you don't have an opportunity to come in with a hand plane or a scraper and flush up that joint. So there's a few things you can do to deal with that. One is to simply dry fit it, and even I made sure I used little 1/8 inch spacers to stick into the grooves to make sure it was dry fit exactly as it was going to be assembled. And then you can do your trimming in a dry fit, and that's a pretty good start. You probably could get away with just doing that, but I find even when you do that and once you get together, when something is supposed to be flush, being able to see a difference and even feel a difference, even the tiniest variance, is very easy to detect. But there's a couple of more things you can do to get around that. One I did on here, you notice on the front side of my cabinet, my stiles and rails are not even flush. There's a reveal there. And not only does that solve the problem of alignment, visible alignment problems, it actually gives the piece a little bit of depth and makes it a little bit more interesting. The second thing you can do, which I did on the inside of the cabinet, I put a little V groove right on the joint. And so with that little tiny bit of space between the two parts, you can no longer detect tiny alignment issues. And actually, again, I think it looks a little bit nice. It gives it a little bit of character, a little bit of depth right there. And I also find that the V grooves is very easy to clean up the glue out of those V grooves. It gives a place for whatever it is you're using, the dental tool or whatever it is you're using to clean up, to guide right along where it needs to go. A couple of things I didn't like that I did on this cabinet, not so much to beat it up, but just to learn. I tried it out, learn from it, move on. And I actually tried in between the joints of the miters. I actually put a thin piece. I had some leftover of English walnut veneer, and I put that in there because I thought it would show up and it would give a nice little touch to it. But because I was trying to stay with not putting anything too loud there, you can't even see the English walnut in there. And in fact, if you look real close, it almost looks like I filled it with glue, which is kind of an amateur. It gives it a sort of an amateurish look. But it's very small. You can't even. It's undetectable. Now, maybe that idea, if you weren't doing a display cabinet, you could do something a little bit more noticeable, like a piece of maple. I did a sample right here. I'm not sure if that idea has some potential or not. It does make it a little bit tricky to glue up because you got 4 surfaces instead of the 2 that you have to glue up. It may or may not be a useful idea. Again, maybe I'll let you guys decide. You can tell me whether you think that's a neat idea or if it's not worth it. So another viewer decides item there. Another issue that I didn't really didn't like about this cabinet. I've been using, this is the 3rd time I've used these Brusso knife hinges. They look really nice, they work really nice once you get them installed, but they're really intended for regular cabinetry so that you can swing out the door and you can access the screws right here. Now you can see what happens is I've got this Cove Moulding in the way, and so I couldn't access the screws. I ended up having to make a custom, take an old Allen wrench and then turn it into the right and turn it into a square drive to get it in there to tighten the screws. So it's not so much the hinges themselves, but the kind of work I've been doing and using them in, it becomes a real pain to actually get them installed. So I think I'm thinking about looking for some kind of alternative. So if you have any suggestions, maybe some nice regular hinges, but some nice extruded brass ones. I tend to like things that don't show up a lot. I don't like to have a lot of finials and that kind of thing, just not my style. So if you have any ideas what I could do with that, or is there some kind of homemade hinge, shop-made hinge I could make in there? So that's another you decide, viewer decision. Couple other design items, smaller things. I've taken a liking to embedding rare earth magnets for different uses. The base of the doll is actually has a metal plate, so I actually embedded magnets right into the base to help hold it in place instead of having to have some kind of screw-on clamp that would be unsightly. It's a much more elegant and clean solution. Likewise, I have a rare earth magnet embedded right into the stile here, and that grabs onto the screw that holds the knob, or the knob. So again, a nice little elegant solution. You don't have unsightly hardware making things look kind of ugly right here. And the other thing I've been doing, I've taken a liking to using, is I use lignum vitae for a lot of little details. The magnets I've covered up with lignum vitae by using double-sided turner's tape, which is a strong version of double-sided carpet tape, as this doorstop right here so that the rails are banging together, and also to cover up the magnets on the bottom that are going to be holding the base of the doll in place. I've also used lignum vitae as sliders in the bottom so that the walnut won't be dragging directly against the surface that it's resting on, table or whatever. Lignum vitae is a good choice for that kind of thing because it's a very durable wood, heavier than water, it actually sinks in water, and it's self-lubricating, so it never gets dried out and cracks. It always slides real nice, so it won't scratch surfaces. Really nice for that kind of thing. Now, one other detail, an excellent way to set your work apart from commercial work is to make sure you finish all sides of it, including the back. If this was a commercial piece, you'd probably just see some ugly some ugly hardboard on the back side just to cover it up. But I made sure I veneered both sides of the panel. The inside was English walnut, the outside with black walnut, because it doesn't have to be as nice as the rest of the piece. But finishing out the back and putting finish on it really is a sign of doing nice work, as opposed to that any kind of commercial piece would not have. Definitely an easy way to set your work apart from commercial work. Well, that's it. That's it for the shop update. Remember those viewer decides items. One, does the Cove Moulding do the right thing? Does it actually draw your eye into the thing trying to be displayed, or is it too big and loud? The second one, that spline inside the Cove, the decorative spline inside a miter, is that worth doing? Is it a waste of time? isn't worth pursuing that, or just forget about it. And the Brusso hinges, is there some other kind of hinge I could use that's as nice as the Brusso's, a nicer solution so I don't have so much trouble trying to install those things. So you can, if you have any suggestions on any of those 3 items or anything else, you can leave a comment down below. So that's it. I'm Brian Havens, and until next time, leave your dogma at the door.